Welcome to the Arc of Our Safety podcast. My name is Brad Fields, and in this episode, we're going to go over the top 5 quotes that will help us to properly frame and interpret the entire Constitution. What is the lens through which we are to interpret everything that is in the Constitution, the government, and political life today? You're going to love this. This is part 1 of this series. I hope you enjoy it. And may God bless you, and may God bless us, everyone. Enjoy. Thomas Jefferson in 1809 referred to the Constitution as the ark of our safety. As it was in the days of Noah, so will it be in the days leading up to the return of the Messiah. The floods are coming. The Lord will soon shut the door. It is now time to board the ark, set sail, head towards the promised land, and never look back again. All right, the first quote that helps us to frame the Constitution, to properly view it in the light that the Founding Fathers saw it, comes from General George Washington's farewell address. This was in September 19th of 1796. Now, I just reread, or actually, I read the entire address for myself for the first time in my life. I never actually read the entire thing. I've read bits and pieces of it. And so that is what is so good about actually getting into the documents and reading it. You get new insight and more information pours into your soul. And so I'm very excited to share this with you. One of the things that's interesting about this is he was trying to retire in 1792. He actually submitted kind of a rough draft of his speech that he gave to James Madison. And he had like several questions, like 5 or 6 questions. One of them was, can I retire? Like he really did not want to be the president of the United States. He was good at it. Everybody loved him. He was doing it out of duty, but he not at all wanted to be the president of the United States. He had already fought through the American Revolutionary War. He'd done the French and Indian War. He had to go through kind of all the hot passions and politics. I mean, it was just draining. Who would really want that? And so multiple times throughout his speeches and in his rough drafts, it's obvious that he does not want to be president. And that's a great lesson right there. If you're going to elect somebody, we need to get back to the days where the people that don't want to do anything with government, those are the best people. Those are the best people that you want to serve in government typically, because they're not going to be misled by their human passions. They're going to think logically and reasonably, and they are more likely to not be corrupted by political power. So it's in this context that he is now, with great anticipation and also sadness, writing his last final statement as the president of the United States. And he even asked James Madison, when should I give this address? And James Madison said you should do it in either September or November. And so he listens to James Madison. He listens to feedback. All right, so this is September 19th, 1796. Now, just to kind of give some context, this is what he says in his, I'll go ahead and read what I think is the most powerful statement of how to properly understand and interpret the Constitution and to understand politics in the United States in general. Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. In vain would that man claim the tribute of patriotism, who should labor to subvert these great pillars of human happiness, these firmest props of the duties of men and citizens. The mere politician, equally with the pious man. You see how he separates the politician versus the pious man? Okay, a politician is someone that's just going to go based off of their local interests, their human passions. They're going to be on excess, on not being able to control themselves, because they're going to take one thing that's local to them, and they're going to push it on the entire nation. And he talks about that in this speech about how factions, and it destroys the unity of the United States, and there's some good. He acknowledges that there's good that can come from factions and political parties, but he realizes that this oftentimes goes in excess, and people become so passionate about one or two things that only affect them, and then it takes over everything. All right, so there's a difference between a politician and a pious man. Okay, we need to be more like the pious man, someone that is reflective, someone that is controlled. Okay, let me think about this, where we really self-reflect. But anyways, he says, equally with the pious man ought to respect and cherish them. A volume could not trace all their connections with private and public felicity. Now, you got to go back and watch. I did a 2 or 3 part series on symbols and reflection. Reflection is is, I believe, the key to knowledge, the key to the interpretative powers of understanding the Constitution. And public felicity is only a reflection of our private felicity. We're not going to be happy publicly if we are not happy privately. I love Stephen R. Covey's book that talks about how our public life is a reflection of our private life. And so again, these are all reflections of internal components that you and I have to work on every day. And then he goes on, let it simply be asked, where is the security for property, for reputation, for life, if the sense of religious obligation desert the oaths, which are the instruments of investigation in courts of justice? So he's saying, where are we going to get, how are we going to accomplish anything as a country if the religious oaths that are in our court system are completely deserted? Meaning, if we are not accountable to God, and if we don't answer to any supreme authority or an authority higher than government, which is what the Declaration of Independence stated, then how are we going to control people? How are people going to self-govern? How are we going to get this thing to work? You can't. Okay, the first thing when you go to court is you have to testify. You have to raise your right arm to the square. And who are you alleging? What is your oath all about? It is you are covenanting, you are witnessing that you are sharing the truth. And that if you are lying, that one day you will be held accountable before a heavenly court, and that there are great consequences for those who lie. He's saying basically, where would our court system be? Where would our government be if we stop being accountable to God? All right, it's not going to work out well. Now, it's interesting, in the early founding of America, if you were an atheist and didn't believe in God, you were not allowed to witness in a court setting. You absolutely could not do it, because if you didn't believe in a God and didn't believe that you had to be accountable, then what was holding you back from lying? All right. And so somebody that didn't believe in God, they could not participate in the court systems. Now it seems that the Supreme Court justices, or a lot of these lower court justices, Circuit of Appeals, it seems like they are atheistic. They are pushing irreligion. And this has been going on, really since the 1960s, where the Supreme Court pushed religion and Bible study out of schools. And we can really see the devastating effects of that. Now, what's some good news is the Supreme Court in the last 10, 20 years has actually restored more religious freedom than it has in the last 50 years. So good things are happening in the Supreme Court. More justices have been put in place that are restoring religious freedom. So that is some good news, and I'll leave some of the links below for that. But continuing on with George Washington, I'm not done yet. And let us with caution indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion, Whatever may be conceded to the influence of refined education on minds of peculiar structure, reason and experience both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail in exclusion of religious principle. 'Tis substantially true that virtue or morality is a necessary spring of popular government. Okay, that's hinting at the Federalist Papers. If you read the Federalist Papers, which I've talked about in prior episodes, just briefly, but he's saying morality or virtue. Okay, what's virtue? We know in the Bible that the woman, for example, that was 12 years going to all these medical healthcare experts, and she wasn't able to get any healing. Okay, and she went to Jesus and touched the border of his garment. And as soon as touched the border of his garment, she was healed instantly. It was a miracle. And it was in the middle of a crowd. She should have been kind of quarantined and all that. But Jesus, he recognized that there was power that came out of him, or virtue is what he calls it. Okay, virtue is this purity. It's this ability to live a morally clean life so that the Holy Ghost can be inside of you. It says in the scriptures that no unclean thing can dwell in the presence of God. And so that is what our founders are after, that you have to have this moral purity or virtue. You have to have clean thoughts and clean actions, and that we must repent frequently in order to keep ourselves cleansed from the sins of this world. John Adams talks a lot about that. Okay, he continues. Rule indeed extends with more or less force to every species of free government. Who that is a sincere friend to it can look with indifference upon attempts to shake the foundation of the fabric. Promote then as an object of primary importance institutions for the general diffusion of knowledge, in proportion as the structure of government gives force to public opinion. It is essential that public opinion should be explained. Can it be that Providence has not connected the permanent felicity of a nation with its virtue? All right, so of all the things that lead to political prosperity, he breaks it down into the subcomponents. What is political prosperity? Political prosperity is a reflection of moral or virtue. All right. And where is virtue obtained? Where do we get this idea that we need to become a better people, that there are problems with the way we think and the way we feel, and that there needs to be this constant accountability? Well, we find that in religion. All right. So if we break this down, political prosperity only comes as we are morally and religiously prosperous. If we look at the churches, are the churches producing virtuous citizens? Are the churches teaching those principles that are in the scriptures that are going to help people to deal with the challenges in their lives, to deal with the marriage problems or children problems, help them to rely upon Jesus Christ to get them through tough times and to get them through those moments where we lose hope? All right. That is what political prosperity, of all the dispositions that lead to political prosperity, it's moral and religious prosperity. So we can use that as a lens to judge our nation. How are we doing in that category? Right now, the fastest rising church in America is that of nuns. Okay. And these are not the Catholic nuns. These are people who don't want to have anything to do with religion. Okay, no religious denomination whatsoever. They're more spiritual and they're not religious. We are losing in America this concept of religion. And as a result, we are losing morality. Look at how many people you know personally, or maybe even you, who have been divorced. Okay, now I'm not judging you, okay? Not saying that you're a bad person, because some people, it just doesn't work. You marry somebody that has choices and they may be completely different, but there's so much divorce in our nation. There's so many broken families. And has a devastating effect on our nation. We've lost this idea of covenants and working out our challenges and our situation. There's so many temptations in our society with pornography and sexting and doom scrolling. Where people are just endlessly wasting time. There's a boy crisis, a men crisis. Less men today are taking responsibility. 50% less graduates of men. There's a men crisis, and this is all because we have lost a lot of that religious fervor. Look at what COVID did. It exposed people. People are like, I don't need to go to church anymore. We are missing out on this concept of community and seeing each other deeply, really connecting with someone else. These are all the things that we need to start doing. And once we get back, we get our morality and our religious backbone, we're going to see political prosperity again. And so these are very, very important principles. Now, things that when I give this quote, when I talk to people on the street or on Facebook, this always turns into a conversation about equality, religious equality, because people are like, oh, well, religion, there's thousands of different religions. There's Buddhism, there's Satanism, there's humanism, there's all these different things. And so very quickly, the debate on this goes from what the intent of George Washington was when he said those words and what people think today. Now, people think today that you should teach all religions equally and that there's no difference in any of the religions, that they're all basically the same, okay? And this is not a good argument to be in because, if you're going to say that Satanism and Buddhism produces the same results as Christianity, then you are dead wrong. And so how can we unify instead of saying, okay, I'm just going to beat you over the head with my Christian club? The only way to do this is to look at the original context. Who was George Washington speaking to? A few says before he gives this morality and religion comment, he says this: with slight shades of difference, you have the same religion, manners, habits, and political principles. You have in common cause fought and triumphed together. The independence and liberty you possess are the work of joint councils and joint efforts, of common dangers, sufferings, and successes. Okay, so he's saying right there, you have the same religion. All right, so now we have to dig deeper. We have to ask the question, what religion was part of the American founding fathers at the time of the Constitution? Okay, and that goes to my second quote. And this is John Adams. He's writing much later. This is June 28th in 1813. He is writing to Thomas Jefferson, and he is talking about who gets credit for American Revolution, for the Constitution. What was it that united the original founding fathers of the colonies? Because before the Revolutionary War, it was a hot mess. I'm going to tell you right now, it was disaster. There was so much contention. There was bickering. People were throwing others in jail. There was actually a lot of established churches at the time. All right, and so it wasn't until we had a common enemy, namely Great Britain, to where the colonies started to gather together. Samuel Adams had the Committee of Correspondence, and for the first time in the nation in 1774, things started to gather together. People started to actually talk to each other, different denominations. Okay, if you remember in 1774, all of these people got together and they said, okay, let's say a prayer. And they started fighting over who should say the prayer. All right, and Samuel Adams was like, well, I'll choose that guy. I'm no bigot. And because of Samuel Adams picking on another guy that went to another church, that dissipated kind of this crazy feeling of contention and bigotry. All right, and from that moment, they were praying and they were together, and every step they just kept on getting more united and more united. All right, and John Adams was by the 40-year preaching of George Whitefield, okay, during the Second Great Awakening. All right, so here we go. So what is the religion that the United States was under at the time of the founding. Here we go. The general principles on which the fathers achieved independence were the only principles in which that beautiful assembly of young gentlemen could unite. And these principles only could be intended by them in their address, or by me in my answer. And what were these general principles? The general principles of Christianity, in which all those sects were united, and the general principles of English and American liberty, in which all those young men united, and which had united all parties in America in majority sufficient to assert and maintain her independence. Okay, so that is critical. That is critical to the debate that we're having in this nation, and with all those people, even other Christians don't want Christianity in schools. I don't get that. Okay, that's like wanting to celebrate your own child's birthday. I mean, what is going on? I mean, why wouldn't you want something that has blessed your life? Okay, let your light so shine. Bless the whole. I mean, we have the historical precedent that backs this up. We need to bring this back. We're not going to force people to go to church. We're not going to force them to go and believe Christianity, but it's the general principles of Christianity that united the original colonies. And what are those general principles? We'll talk about that at a later podcast, but basically the general principles of Christianity can be generalized throughout the whole world, okay, in all religions, okay, all major religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. It is that of, love God and love your fellow men, okay, and forgive one another. All right, that's basically some of the a precursor to what the Christian principles were. That, hey, we need to stop focusing on all of our differences and realize that we're all going to get killed by Great Britain if we don't start coming together and start looking for the positive and the good things. Okay, there was I think it was a Swedish scholar instrumental in helping get the temple, the LDS temple built in Sweden. He developed this concept called holy envy, okay, where we need to have this holy envy for other religious faiths. That, instead of comparing my best to your worst, that we take, what are the good things, okay? And if we live out these good, have holy envy, we can start to have more unity in this country and more love for God and for our fellow men. So, and again, I'm going to leave this all in the link below. Let's see, we'll have time for one more, and then we'll probably do part 2 of this. Okay, so this is my third favorite quote from the founding that will help bring the Constitution into its proper framework. Okay, this was in 1787, February 27th. Okay, and this is Thomas Jefferson. He wrote in the Notes on the State of Virginia in 1781, and then it got revised. But this is something that went throughout the whole world, especially France. Okay, they were interested in what America was doing. And this is what Thomas Jefferson said. He says this: "And can the liberties of a nation be thought secure when we have removed their only firm basis, a conviction in the minds of the people that these liberties are the gift of God, that they are not to be violated but with his wrath? Indeed, I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just, that his justice cannot sleep forever." Okay, and this is something that George Washington echoes in his farewell address, the public mind. What is the public mind? Okay, because you're transitioning from George Washington to somebody else. Okay, what is the health of the public mind? And George Washington was worried. He was afraid that America wasn't going to be able to handle this transfer of power. And so he had to get counsel a lot with James Madison and others, and they had to assure him, that they were going to support him and help him in this transition of power. But what is, the foundation of our liberties? Okay, he says that the foundation, or the only firm basis that these liberties, come from. It's that the people themselves have a conviction in their minds. Okay, they have to have a conviction in their minds that these liberties are the gift of God. All right. And so you cannot maintain liberty. You can't have the Constitution. You can't get any progress unless you understand and have an actual conviction. A conviction to me means that you're willing to share it with somebody else. You're willing to go outside of your comfort zone and teach someone else. Well, I don't see that at all. I don't see people having a conviction in their mind that these liberties are the gift of God. I see people with a lot of conviction, for Facebook or social media or beer. People have a huge conviction, it seems like everything else except for their liberty. They love to enjoy their liberty, but they don't look to the source from whence it sprang. And that was me. That was me for several years. And so, it is a gift of God, and we have a responsibility to speak out and to be responsible for these things. But if we don't have a mass change in the public educational system, if we don't start injecting religious and virtue and morality into the educational system, we're going to continue to have a irreligious and an immoral people. Look at all of the sex trafficking that's going on right now. And the United States is like number one. Okay? We are a nation in deep need of repentance, and Christ is willing to forgive us. He is willing to forgive us. There's so many stories in the scriptures that tell us of people who were absolutely idolatrous and adulterous, and they repented of their sins, like Nineveh, for example. Okay, Nineveh was a horrible place to live. They did horribly mean things to their political opponents. That was one of the reasons why Jonah did not want to go to Assyria or Nineveh, because of the things that they had done to their political opponents. But he preached repentance, and the people listened to his message, and they were forgiven by God. Okay, so these things are a gift of God. Okay, very, very important. All right, I got two more quotes that help us to frame the Constitution, but I'm going to end for right now, and so we'll pick this up again next week. But this is very, very important when having a discussion about the Constitution and understanding, how to properly interpret it, because there's so many different ways to interpret it, and there's so many things out there that I believe cause spherical aberration. Okay, and I talk a lot about spherical aberration. I did a series called CoStar, all right, where I talk about Hubble Space Telescope and how there was this big old blurry mirror, and they had to come up with these other mirrors to correct the spherical aberration. Right now in our society, we have spherical aberration with the Constitution. It gets so blurry that you don't even know what you're talking about anymore. And so these are some of the things, these quotes are there for us to be able to properly frame the Constitution. And so appreciate you listening to these quotes, and we will see you next week on the Ark of our safety. Remember to never leave the Ark. May God bless you, and may God bless us, everyone. Thanks.
J. Reuben Clark once taught, when we begin to tamper with the Constitution, we begin to tamper with the law of Zion, which God himself set up. After the flood, the Lord revealed to Noah, and the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it, that I may remember the everlasting covenant which I made unto thy father Enoch, that when men should keep all my commandments, Zion should again come on the earth, the city of Enoch, which I have caught up unto myself.
Thank you for watching, and may you join us next time as we mutually pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor in defending our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.